Rebecca. So we're talking about a series of events. So if you read the media, you'll say that it's been about a cricket match. But if you look in history, you'll see very clearly that people have been studying the the communal relations of Leicester for over a decade. Well, the early reports are there from 2009, and there's been inter and intra-communal tensions for a long time. So this is nothing new. It's just not been monitored in terms of the relationship between Hindus and Muslims, or with the broader community who are not either Hindu or Muslim. So there's been a lot of emphasis placed by researchers, some of which are funded by the Soros Foundation. There's a report there from 2009 that talks about Muslims in Europe, and Leicester was one of the chosen cities. There's been a lot of emphasis on looking at Muslims of Leicester, but I have found less in relation to who the Hindu communities are. Leicester's known worldwide as being one of the places where Hindu festivities are larger, the largest outside of India. So it's got a reputation for being proud of its Hindu cultural heritage, I suppose, and a place where festivities attract people from probably all over England and probably all over Europe. I can imagine that many, with such huge festivals, that you probably get visitors. So it's a tourist attraction. It probably brings money into the town. And there's a lot at stake here, aside from just power and control within the community. Who gets to win the power and control within the community due to these events and how they've played out? Going from the mayor all the way down through to the religious organisations, you can see there's an imbalance of power. There's a lack of voice coming from the Hindu community. There is an open, tacit, and explicit demonisation and vilification of certain members of the Hindu community. And I don't think it was helped by the fact that there was a lack of Hindu voice. So when these incidents started playing out, and I'm not going to give a start time, but I am going to say that I was monitoring this from the 6th. So the minute somebody sent me a WhatsApp message with a video of a Hindu home being attacked, it was the 6th of September. And already there had been mobs gathering in the streets. Already there'd been Ganesh Chaturthi. There was a Ganesh Pandal attacked with eggs. There was already an incident of violence. There was an incident of a Sikh apparently having his shirt torn. So these are backdrops. But before that, there were incidents of temple attacks and hate crimes, which you can find just by, anybody can find them. So it's quite astonishing the media hasn't been able to dig any of this up. If I can type a few lines in from Australia, and up comes years, going back to 2017, of Hindu temples being intimidated or harassed. So this is nothing new. So I want to put it in that context. If it's nothing new, then why was it so difficult for the police to respond to this in an appropriate way? Well, I would argue that they knew. And I'll say what they knew because I told them what I know what they knew because I know what I told them. So from the 7th of September, I was tagging them. And if you go onto my wall, you can see 300 messages, tweets with tags. Some of them are quite important sets of information and some of them are just ongoing messages or threads. But the police were advised on my wall, and what I couldn't tell them publicly because I didn't want them to know I had access to some information that I shouldn't possibly have known. I told them through email, and I also phoned them, okay? So from the 14th to the 20th, I phoned or emailed them 11 times. I had personal conversations with the police in Leicester 5 times, and I had emails with confirmation, sending them screenshots of people escalating communal violence and hate toward Hindus. So that started from the 14th of September. So they knew that these people from Birmingham were planning to come down and chop up Hindus. They were planning to go and take out their anger against them for being Hindut, for RSS, whatever extremists. We know they'd already been patrolling. So we had Muslim patrols before that. So, apparently the police knew that this was coming, okay? But what they didn't know was that the Hindu community were organizing a protest. But my question is, if they knew that these people were coming, what did they expect? Did they really think that 30, 40, the 40 people that came from Birmingham would not be joined by local Muslims from Leicester to actually build up their forces? I don't know how many were originally from Leicester or Birmingham, but there were 30 people tagged in the invitation about this, let's go down. And there were even rape threats. So I said to the police, 14th, I said, Dutch Raja, Norman Khan, these accounts, Luckman Khan, I named the accounts, I sent them the screenshots. I said, these people are inciting hate, they're inciting violence, and they're coming down to Leicester. So that was a few days beforehand, and there was a Navratri mailer. So I assumed that they must have been choosing Saturday to go down because of the Navratri mailer. And there were rape threats in there that we were going to go and get these Hindutva's mothers. So they were going to rape the mothers of the Hindus. So, of course, as this escalated over the week, my friend here, Saurabh Mishra, and I, who were watching this very closely across many social media platforms, the responses, the incitement, we were starting to panic. So I had to phone them a few times because I was calling out on media, on social media. You can see that. Where is the Hindu Police Association, and why aren't they dealing with this constant waves of propaganda, from abduction to Quran burning to pissing on a masjid? That's the language that they use. So apologies for the crude language. There were other accusations that they were disrupting antisocial behavior. But what we actually saw in the attacks were that it wasn't these alleged antisocial people, it was Hindus that were actually victims of these hate crimes. So we were freaking out, thinking, how are the police going to stop them from targeting ordinary Hindus? Because the language they're using, like cow piss drinkers and Hindutva terrorists and Hindu extremists and all of this type of inflammatory language, you can't, I mean, what are the signs of a Hindu extremist? So we knew they were going to go after Hindus. So the police knew, and they knew how serious it was. And they said to me that they took it very seriously, and they gave me all the numbers, and we've, it's all there on the record. So theoretically, if there was an inquiry, they could look, up my name, Hindu Human Rights Australia, and they could find these, right? So I was saying on the night of the event, I was saying to them, this is the group from which these Muslim mobs from Birmingham and Leicester, who knows where they were all from, were organising. So they were saying, come down, we need more, there's not enough here, there's 200 Hindutva extremists and whatever, right? And come down, and then within two hours, the place was packed. And they were bragging about how many there were of them and how few of the others. Now, this was after the police had issued a dispersal order. So they weren't supposed to even be there to begin with. They were supposed to have gone. But what they were actually doing is mobilizing on social media to bring down a couple of hundred more. And why were they coming? Because they were angry. Why were they angry? Because they'd been incited. And how had they been incited? Because there were allegations that, for instance, the traffic warden had been stabbed by a Hindutva extremist, and they were being spread on some organisations, which I would like to know if they're taxpayer funded, spreading this type of disinformation. So I was tagging the police on social media saying, can you please deal with this? This is propaganda. Can you please ask these people to stop escalating? Now, there should have been some type of an incitement charge which was applicable to those parties using social media and amplifying tensions, especially when the responses that they were getting were violent responses. Like, we are going to come down there, we're going to chop them up, these Hindu, etc., etc. Nasty, violent, anti-Hindu language combined with violent threats. This is outside the parameters of freedom of speech. This is where hate speech and incitement to commit a hate crime actually is embedded in your law. So that's all there. And this all can be obviously reported. But So you can see that I'm in Australia. So if me and my friend, my colleague, he's a professional, mind you, we're both professionals. We can do this and monitor this from Australia. We don't get paid for this. This is safer. We had almost a month of sleepless nights monitoring this. But what I found from the Hindu community was I was begging them, please, please respond to this, because this is dangerous. This is going to put lives at risk. And the kinds of responses that we heard were often, we stand with our Muslim brothers and we're one people and we won't allow these outside people to come in and disrupt us. And the kind of information that was for like 1 or 2 years after you'd been doing mediation, and you worked through your troubles and you'd resolved them and you'd said, okay, look, we've come up with a solution that both of us are happy with. It wasn't something that you can just suffocate all conversation with and say, it's all right, we're one. That's just not how things work. And what that does is it creates an illusion, like a smoke screen, so that what then happened was, because Hindus weren't contributing to the conversation, they got their way. And as you can see, there's dozens and dozens of media articles now. I said to the community, I said, if anyone's in London, go down there and take footage. Why? Because there was no media on our side and there's nobody documenting this. So someone, not only one person, but probably a whole range of people, could have gone down there and taken their mobile phones, their professional cameras. They could have stuck a media thing across their chest so that they were, like worn a hard hat, taken safety precautions, but they should have been there so that they could see, document, and so that the story that was told wasn't one-sided, because they've managed to turn documentation of their hate crimes into some kind of gleaming prism of unity. And that's because professional communication skills are not there. Professional media skills are not there. Understanding conflict, understanding how to resolve conflict, those skills are not there. And a lack of confrontation of conflict is actually a type of passive aggression. It actually is a type of aggression in itself. And if you leave a conflict and you don't deal with it, you're creating more conflict. So it's actually created more conflict. And we're now in a very dangerous, volatile sort of atmosphere. And that's partly because the police didn't take it seriously. They didn't, and I'm not saying that they didn't care. I think they did care, but they didn't act in the way that I asked them to act, which was to get their terrorist squad down there. They needed to get terrorism into their social media groups and watch them, because I was concerned that there were extremists in those groups actually antagonizing. And I was very seriously concerned about that. And we did see extremists. So I was right to be concerned. And I said, you get your terrorist squad, right? Get them into this groups and monitor it. And obviously, I just imagined that they would have the right police there. I just assumed that because I'm in Australia. And that's what we would have done. We would have had the right police there, or on waiting to on standby, waiting to come out, with their horses, with whatever weaponry they needed, to tamp the crowd down, because this was a situation where a kid nearly got lynched. Like, we're talking about people's lives here. We saw a bunch of men rolling a car, right? Rolling a car and going to drag a young man who was driving home out of his car because he was identified as a Hindu. That hasn't even made the media. So, these are the kind of things that, how did it happen? How did it happen? Because they weren't prepared. So they weren't prepared for the Hindus to turn up, and the Hindus should have given them notice. I think that was irresponsible, because they knew, if they knew that the others were coming down, then they actually, could have helped the police and saved all of this trouble. Not necessarily saved all of it, but at least had more police forces there. But at the same time, the police should have known that they should have gone out and liaised with the community and said, hey, are you guys planning on doing anything? We've heard that, have you heard anything's going on Saturday? Get out there. So there is this fantastic guy who's really nice. His name is Ranjit Sanigra, and I've spoken with him. He's a police liaison. He said that he will be able to give advice to the Hindus on what their rights are, what their legal rights are. And I've asked, whether he can help the Hindus to do some community safety programs, because there needs to be like neighbourhood watch, which the police normally run. There needs to be community forums where the police are involved and they get the communities together. And I'm not just talking about Muslims and Hindus. I'm talking about Muslims, Hindus, Christians, atheists, the whole community, every single stakeholder, because every business, every person who lives in that community is actually part of that community. And looking at it just through this prism of Muslim and Hindu is like really not reflective of the city and the health of the vibrancy of the city. I mean, I've seen comments about anti-immigrant sentiment. That's it. I've had comments about anti-immigrant sentiment. So that needs to be looked at, because if they're not included, the ordinary community are going to be, they feel like they're not included in the interest of their town. So it's part of their life as well. So I think it needs to be dealt with. And two more things that people are already afraid to report. They don't necessarily have the skills and the knowledge or the language to report. Some do, some don't. They're already afraid. Okay, so we need a Hindu hate crime officer. It's absolutely vital, because they're not going to go to a Muslim in a situation where there's animosity between Hindus and Muslims. It's just totally unreasonable to expect the Hindu community to trust a Muslim to report a hate crime which may be conducted by a Muslim. Whether or not she's good at her job is totally secondary. I'm sure she was chosen because she was the best fit for the job. But at the same time, it's not going to assist Hindus to come forward. And the other thing is there's an investigation going on, and I heard the council, the mayor saying they want it to be dealt with within 2 weeks or a few weeks. How are they going to conduct an investigation before the court has done its job? We don't know what happened until the court's done its job. We don't know what happened until the police have gone through 6,000 hours of footage. You cannot conduct an investigation within 2 or 3 weeks. It takes me 2 or 3 weeks to write a report based just on the social media. 6,000 hours of footage, matching identities, recording, coding. It's just not possible. It needs to be done in due time. So that's my my synopsis.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.